So, welcome to our webinar for how to write a CV. And this is about writing a CV for professional support worker roles. And this includes things like SEN nannies and mannies, family support workers, team leaders, a wide range of kind of roles. But any role where this is seen as a professional support worker role, this is your profession, this is where you want to basically be. And we want to go through this so we can help you make the best CV possible so that you can basically get that job that you really, really want. Now, as recruiters, we see hundreds of CVs every week, and we see people who have some really good experience, but they just don't present it in a way that it's going to come across in the best way for them to help. So that's why we're doing this series today. And my name is Sally, and Sally Britton, and I started Snap way back in 2001. And obviously, over all of those years, I've seen many, many CVs, good and bad. So what we'll cover today is why your CV needs to be different for these roles, what to include and what not to include. We'll talk about how you can best lay out your CV and the importance of telling your story within your CV, and also the importance of being really positive. And at the end, we'll give you a link to a CV template that you can download if you want to use it. And this has some additional tips just to help you really make the best CV. So why does a support worker's CV need to be different? So I have a picture here of a plumber, and I chose a plumber because I needed one recently. And thankfully, a good plumber came and fixed my leak. And of course, we wouldn't actually have a CV for a plumber, but the principle is the same. What do I need for a plumber? I would just need him or her to basically turn up. They need to be reasonably priced, and I need to know that they can do the job. Now, that's very different for a professional support worker role. We need to know a whole lot more information about you as a person. You're going to be working in a very private, personal environment. It's going to be in the client or child's home. You're going to be providing a very personal service to that person. And the people that you're going to be working with are potentially vulnerable. So the people that are looking to employ you, your prospective employer, they're looking to employ a person, not just a set of skills. So of course, experience and skills are very important, but they're looking to employ a person. So you've got to make sure that you as a person comes through as somebody who is who you are, not just a set of skills. So what kind of things are people looking? What kind of qualities are our clients looking for when they're looking at support workers' CVs? They're looking to see not just about the experience, they're looking to see what kind of person is this? What kind of person? Am I going to want to have this person providing care for my child or my relative or my partner? Are they an interesting person? Are they empathetic? Are they patient? Are they respectful? Are they genuine? Are they positive? Are they keen to learn? Are all of these things that really are what people are looking for? And of course, they're looking for experience because some jobs will need very specific experience. But you can learn a lot of things. You can't actually change your personality and bring all of these things in. And we know that professional support workers are all of these things because you need to be able to do this job properly. So where do you put this in your CV? So the first thing in your CV is that you'll have a short summary, and you can use this. This is the first thing that our clients will read. So you can use this and use positive words to describe who you are and be really real, be you. So if you put in things that is very kind of not personal, it just doesn't bring out your qualities of who you are as a person. And so you can also put it in the job descriptions. So when you're putting down your jobs, you can basically say, okay, What did you do? How did you do these things? And how, most importantly, did it benefit the child? So, what did you achieve? What did you learn while you were doing this job? This will all help bring in those things about all of those qualities that we mentioned. The fact that you're keen to learn, that you're interested, all of those kind of qualities. And that's very different to some CVs, which if you'd be applying for a different job, where you do just basically list down your experience and your skills. So now it's what to include. So what to include? You want to include your contact details. If you don't want to give your full address, that's fine, but just make sure that you put the general location. So you might just put London EC2, and always include a professional email. And over the years, we have seen some emails that have been uh, less than questionable, to say the least. So it needs to be a professional email. Just your name, as simple as possible. You might have another email that you use for your friends, but something that is just a professional email, because it does say quite a bit about you. And as I referred to before, you want to have a short opening statement. And that opening statement is really the first thing that people are going to read. So it needs to say something about you. It needs to bring in really what you're kind of looking for, the type of job that you're looking for, a brief overview of your experience, and a little bit of something about you. Just tell people a little bit about you, maybe about where your interest in supporting people with a disability or additional needs came from. So say a basic overview of your experience, but it should be very personal. Then you want to put in your relevant qualifications. And when I say relevant qualifications, that will vary from person to person. So if you've just left college and you haven't actually worked, then your school qualifications and obviously your college qualifications or university are going to be very, very relevant. But if you have done maybe, sort of several years of experience, you've worked in jobs, putting in your school qualifications is not going to be so relevant. Sorry, so relevant. So, for example, obviously, I'm so old, so I've done years and years of jobs, and I wouldn't be putting in my school qualifications. I might put a very, very brief summary. They really weren't that great, so I'd rather they weren't actually the focus of my CV. I'd be putting in my further education, my degree that I did as a mature student, and I would just put in a very, very short bit about my schooling. But don't forget to put in those qualifications that you've done that are in-house training. All of that is really, really good and very, very helpful to have. Make sure that you put a date on all of your further or higher qualifications, because you need to be able to make sure that your CV flows so people can go, okay, I can see that's where they were working and that's when they were studying. And put in a little bit of information about your qualification. So, for example, if you've done a very relevant qualification and you had some placement experience, make sure that you put that in as well and list that, because that's all good experience. So you want a full history of your jobs. Now, sometimes people they might leave some jobs out. So they might sort of say, okay, well, I worked in Marks and Spencer's, so that's really not relevant. So I'll just leave that job out. Don't leave out jobs. Make sure that you include all of your jobs, because all jobs are relevant. You'll have skills that you learn from all jobs. It means that there are no gaps in your CV, and it means also that it shows you've got a great work ethic. And actually, there's nothing wrong with working in Marks and Spencer's. It's kind of like it's all good things. When you put your description of each job, of course, what you want to do is you want to expand on all of the ones that are very relevant, and you want to keep those other jobs that are not so relevant with just a brief description. So you have your Marks and Spencers where you put a very, very brief, maybe one line kind of description. But if you were working in an SEN school or a rehabilitation unit, obviously you're going to expand and you're going to talk a lot more about the clients that you're working with. what you did with them, how you helped them, and you'll expand a lot more. You want to make sure that you explain any gaps. So if you've been traveling or if you've been raising a family, just make sure that you explain any gaps so people can just see that journey that you've had. People should be able to look at a CV and not think, oh, well, I wonder what were they doing there, or there seems to be a bit missing there. And what you want to also remember to do is put in the months of your employment as well as the years for each job. So quite often we see just the years. Well, if you started that job in January or if you started that job in December, that's a whole difference of 12 months. And we can't see if there's any gaps if you've put in, if you haven't put in the months. So just make sure that you put the months. If, like myself, you did a long time ago, you did maybe lots of jobs and you can't quite remember the months, that's not so important, but you need to have at least the last 5 years with all of the months put in. So, I mean, I did jobs, 30 years ago. Well, I couldn't tell you the months of them. I probably could because I probably put them in my CV at the time, but I couldn't tell you now. So, but yeah, make sure you include the months. So what you also want to do is put in information about you as a person, your interests, your hobbies. So again, we're going back to that real personalized CV. So it's not just a list of skills and experience, it's really bringing in who you are as a person. And I can say, hand on heart, that I've actually placed somebody because of their hobbies. So I put forward 3 fantastic candidates. All of them could do the job, and one of them had kayaking as a hobby. Now, unbeknown to me, my client wanted her son to learn kayaking, and so she chose that candidate. She said she could have had any of them; they were all 3 really, really good candidates. But actually, she chose that candidate because she did kayaking, and she knew then that that could be a shared interest that she could do with her son. So really important. And it does say quite a lot about you, about your hobbies, in terms of, what kind of person you are. So, you might like going to the theatre or doing embroidery or going to art galleries, which kind of gives people information, or you might be really outdoorsy, you like rock climbing, canoeing, all of those things just gives people more information about who you are.
Sally, can I just ask just before, if we go back to the
Sure.
former page, I've got
Yeah.
a couple of things. Is it, I mean, I'm the same as you. I've got, it sort of goes back to 1993, so I've got more than 3 pages, but they are relevant. Is that okay?
In terms of how many pages it goes on to?
Yeah.
So it is. So what we do often see is people trying to cram everything onto 1 page or even 2 pages. And we don't want a CV that's 10 pages long. If you have a CV that's 10 pages long, you need to summarize it basically, because even I, with all of my years of kind of work, I wouldn't need to have 10 pages to do it.
Okay.
But you shouldn't restrict yourself in terms of trying to squeeze it into 2 pages. If your CV is 3 or 4 pages long, that's okay. But just as I said before, make sure that the relevant jobs are the ones you expand on, and the ones that are not so relevant, just really reduce those. So that, because that's where you want people's interest to go to. You want them to basically sort of go, okay, that's where I want to go into. I want to see all about that. So yes, so don't feel that you have to sort of squeeze it onto 1 or 2 pages. Don't let it be 10 pages. Look at it and kind of go, how I can summarize it.
Yeah.
But it's about making sure that each relevant job is included and is really explained very well.
Is it also very relevant to, because we have lots of people who have done personal cared for family members, and is that also benefit to write? Could that be written in your statement where you have maybe a sibling who is on the autistic spectrum, or you've cared for a parent?
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good point, Janet, because sibling experience, or if you've had experience that is not professional experience, but you've been supporting a family member, you've grown up. I spoke to a candidate recently, and she grew up. Her family fostered children with
Okay.
additional needs and disabilities, and she'd grown up with children. So she couldn't ever remember
Mm,
a time not having foster siblings. And
okay.
all of that is really fantastic experience because you see, you know it from both sides. You know,
Yeah.
you're not just going in as an employee. You've seen how it is and how a family, you know, the sort of the challenges and the joys and everything that a family would experience. So absolutely, it's a really good point, Janet. Thank you. Yes, you know, adding all of that kind of experience is really relevant. And if you looked after a family member for an extended period and you weren't actually working, you can put that down as a job on your CV. Again, it makes sure that there's no gaps and everything. But make sure that you're clear about that that's what it is. So
Mhm.
don't put it down as a job as if it's a normal kind of, you know, job with an employer. You know, you put down, you know, I supported my mother, you know, who'd had a stroke or whatever it might be, put the dates and everything so that it is a job, but it's clear that you were doing this
Mhm.
for a family member rather than for an employer. And yes, in terms of kind of that kind of
Yeah.
experience that you've had with siblings or you know in that kind of family environment, that's great to put that in the supporting statement just at the top. Because that's probably where your passion came from and where your understanding and all of those has come from. So yeah, that's a really good place to put in top on the statement.
Okay. I've got a question has just come in, Sally. I'm sorry, just throw another one at you just because I think it's relevant to this page. Is about as a person who's purposely worked on a temporary basis, so over a period of let's say 4 to 5 years, what is relevant to keep in there and what is not?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question because um, my last 10-page, or I think it was actually 12-page CV, did come from a candidate who had done temporary work pretty much most of her career, and she'd put in, amazingly, she'd put in all of the dates, literally months and years for every job, and of course that was very commendable, and I was quite impressed. But it didn't make it a great CV, to be honest, because I didn't know what she'd done. All I knew were
Mm,
the dates because she didn't have any space to put in actually what she'd done. So what I recommended to her, would recommend to everybody, is if you've done that and you've been working in lots and lots of um, uh, different temporary roles, instead of putting in all of the dates, you can summarize some of them. So supposing there was a 5-year history, you could basically summarize that 5-year history and say from this date to this
mhm,
date, I was working, you know, for multiple clients in temporary roles. This is the type of client I was supporting. This was their needs. This is what I did. This is how I helped them, and summarize that. If you've worked for one agency or one or two agencies, that's very helpful because then that information can be then confirmed and verified by the agency, and you could put it almost
mhm.
under the banner of those different agencies that you worked for, um, and to keep it there. So you could have just your most recent ones with the dates, and then you could summarize some of the older ones so that you are then it's more readable basically.
Okay. Thank you. No more questions just yet.
So we've talked about what to include and now what not to include. So please don't include any employers' names. And this is private, you know, families and private clients. If you've worked for Marks and Spencers, of course, that's fine. You can put Marks and Spencers and then the location. But if it's private families, you should not put their names in or any contact kind of details for confidentiality. And just as I managed to make a placement because somebody had put their hobbies in, I also managed to not make a placement many, many years ago because I hadn't noticed that the client that I'd forwarded to a case manager included somebody's, her employer's name and
Mm,
address, actually. And the case manager immediately said, I'm not considering this person. She clearly doesn't understand anything about confidentiality. And I learned my lesson, and that was many, many years ago. And now we're very, very careful that no employers' names are included. But for if you're submitting a CV to us or for any other agency, I would always recommend that you remove anybody's identifying details, any employers' names due to confidentiality. I would not put in any salary or wages of previous jobs. It's not necessary, and it can be quite unhelpful. For example, if you're moving for a job that is a lesser paid job, so perhaps you've been working in a school and then you move to work on a one-to-one basis with a private client, your wage might be increasing quite considerably, and it would be, to be blunt, it would be quite unhelpful for somebody, for a potential employer, to see that previously you earned quite a bit less. If we put you forward for a job, then we believe that you're suitable for the job and you're suitable to be paid that amount of money. So leave that out. Any negative comments at all? Have a look at your CV. Is there anything here that is negatively written? Any negative comments? Remove them. Take them out of your CV. Change them. Remove them. It could be anything from, I left this company because the management was terrible, or whatever it is. Just don't have any negative comments in your CV. Similarly, make sure that you don't have any inappropriate terms. Now, we all know that the correct terminology used within the disability field, it changes and it's updated. And this is how it should be, and what was appropriate 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even in a different country is no longer appropriate now. Several years ago, it was not appropriate to say an autistic child or an autistic client, but it is now, and that has come from the autistic community. That is how the majority of autistic people wish to be referred to, and you wouldn't say the same thing in terms of you wouldn't define somebody by their disability. For example, if they had Down syndrome, you would say a child with Down syndrome. So you just need to make sure that you've got the appropriate terms in your CV. So yes, they're appropriate terms, not inappropriate. Spelling mistakes. There really shouldn't be any excuse to have spelling mistakes in this day and age. Everybody has a spell checker. Please use it and make sure there's no spelling mistakes. So the last one is, don't include just a list of duties from previous job descriptions. So we see very, very often a list of duties. And I think what happens is that somebody is offered a job and they're sent a job description. They go, this is your job, this is what you'll be doing. And people put that into their CV. It doesn't tell us anything really. Well, it tells us very little. So if somebody has on their list of duties that they're going to be supervising or supporting a teacher in the classroom, and they have a list of kind of other duties, but it doesn't tell us actually what you did. It tells us a list of duties of the things that you should have been doing, but it doesn't tell us what you did, how that benefited the child or the client. You need to be very descriptive. You need to know what kind of additional needs or disabilities the client has, and sort of the age groups that you worked with. So it's obviously very different if you're working with a child of 4 or if you're working with a young person of 13. And what you did will be very different. And depending on what their additional need or disability is, it will be very different. But just having a list of duties really doesn't tell us anything. So just have a look at your CV and kind of go, okay, yeah, that is actually just a list of duties that anybody doing that job would have, because it was just in the job description. It's about personalizing it. What did you do? And most importantly, how did that help the child or the client? That's kind of what it's all about.
Yeah. Before you move on to the next page, Sally.
Yes.
I have inappropriate or appropriate to include a photo on your top, on that front page of your CV? Good or bad?
Personally, I would say I wouldn't include. And when I say personally, it's not personally, it's professionally. My professional professional opinion is that I wouldn't include a photo. Um, Including a photo is based you have to make sure you get absolutely the right kind of photo for a CV.
Okay.
I have seen some photos that people put on a CV, and you kind of go, that's not really the most appropriate photo that you could have taken. I did actually have somebody, and I'm sure most people would not do this. They did actually include a photo on their photo, which presumably was taken on holiday, and they were drinking. They were having a drink and sort of almost doing a cheers kind of thing. And you're going to go, okay, that's really not the kind of like the image that you want to project when you're actually going to go into a support worker role. So I think it's quite difficult to get quite just the right one. But B, I think also it's kind of like people should be looking at your experience and how you're expressing yourself on kind of like within your who you are in your CV and everything, rather than just having a look at a photo kind of thing. So personally, I would say no. Leave your photo off of your CV.
Cool. Thank you.
So the layout. So the layout needs to be as clear and professional as possible. Keep it really simple. So no fancy fonts, and just keep it to black ink. I've seen a really a rainbow array of different color ink, and it's quite difficult. I think everybody would agree that I've written, "Can you read this?" twice, and I think everybody would agree that the top one is more easier to read than the bottom one. No fancy borders. I have had, for some reason, marching ants around a border on a CV once, which was didn't add. Uh,
Doesn't look good.
an interesting choice, but I think people maybe do these things because they think I want my CV to stand out. Well, the best way that you can make your CV stand out is to do all the things that we've talked about, is to make it really personal, make it really about you, make it really positive, and put in all of your experience and how that experience helped the person that you worked with, because that's what our clients and what your potential employers are looking for. So yes, don't make it stand out with fancy borders or font or things like that. Um, Always start with your most recent job first. Sometimes people have a CV and they basically add to the bottom of their CV. And so the person who is looking at your CV, whether that's us, whether it's your potential employer, they're going to be reading about what you did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, which is probably going to be the least relevant thing that you're doing. So always start at your most recent first and work backwards. So I've been saying this all along in terms of really in everything that I've been saying here. It is about telling your story. Who are you? So have a look at your CV that you've got now and just look at you. Does your CV reflect you? Does it tell people who you are as a person? Does it tell people what your passions are, your achievements, your transferable skills, what your interests are, who you are as a person? Does it really show a history in your career progression? It's some people sort of, they have a very different kind of career progression. So, for example, we've had some really fabulous people that have come to us who register with us, who have maybe arrived to the UK from a different country. Their English has been quite minimal, so they've worked in a job that is not related. Then their English has improved and they get another job. And then they work their way up and they work their way up. And to see that career progression is just fantastic. And it says an awful lot about somebody. And so all of these things are so important. And it's not just a list of duties that you've been doing. It's not just bang, 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 bang. It's about you as a person. And I hope that's what I've emphasized in this. It's like people are looking to employ a person. They're not looking to employ a set of skills.
I will add to that actually, just before you go on, is that we had a girl who was really quite incredible, but I asked where her initial interest in this came, and she hadn't written it on her CV, and she'd done the Duke of Edinburgh Award. And
Yeah,
to me, that said so much. She was
yeah,
16 or something, and that inspired her. So just a
absolutely.
side note,
Yes.
incredible.
Yes, I can tell everybody that as recruiters, when we see a CV that has Duke of Edinburgh Award on there, we're very interested in that person.
Yeah.
And as I said before, we see an awful lot of CVs. So for us to be able to kind of go, oh, this person's interesting, you need to put all of these things and all of those extra kind of things,
Yeah.
where your passion started, um, where did you want to actually start doing this? I placed somebody who had 3 months experience, and she was in error. She was put into the Camp America, in the disability Camp America. She didn't even mean to go there, and she went to do that. She was absolutely fantastic. She just got it. And but if you looked at her CV was, she'd worked as a, I think she was a dental nurse assistant, and then she had a tiny little line about working for Camp America. And but actually, she always knew that this was kind of like something that she kind of wanted to try. She got it, she understood it. And so anything like that, any extra things like that, as you've just said, Janet, Duke of Edinburgh Awards, anything, voluntary work. Have you done any voluntary work? Sort of put that on there. Maybe that's where your passion came from. Maybe you did horse riding for the disabled. Anything kind of like that is just, it gets everybody's attention, because we know that you kind of go, oh yeah, this person's not just doing this as a fill-in job, or a sort of a stepping stone onto another kind of job. It is, they all want to work as a professional support worker. This is their profession. This is where they want to kind of do, and all of those things. Yeah, so helpful. So be positive in your CV. So I had the opportunity to, whatever it is, rather than I had to. And I've seen that quite a lot. I had to do this, I had to do that. And but I had the opportunity to do, it just has a completely different feel to it. So if you write phrases such as, by supporting my client to use eye gaze, he was able to make his own choices. Whatever it is, you want to basically describe what you're doing, describe how that helped your client or the young person or the child, because that's what it's all about. And don't use words such as she suffered from. And we know that people can suffer from epilepsy. If you have an epileptic seizure, it's quite likely you are suffering from them, but it's a negative kind of word to use. And sometimes people do put, she suffered from cerebral palsy. Well, I know
Mhm.
somebody who has cerebral palsy and she does not suffer from it. Yes, she has certain challenges, but she doesn't suffer from cerebral palsy. So you want to keep any negative kind of words out, be really positive. So we have a template, and Janet will pop the link into the chat. We have a template that you can download on our website, and it has some additional tips in there as well. And basically, you can just download it. It's a Word document. You just override our suggestions, you put your details in there, and it just means that you can create a nice, simple, professional looking, easy to read, structured CV, all the things that we've been talking about there. And there's extra kind of little hints and tips to sort of put on to your CV where you're going through that. And it's really, really worth looking at your CV and going, right, I'm going to redo my CV. And sometimes it's very easy to apply for a job, and it's very people just pop their sort of CV in, not really kind of looking, is my CV really geared to this job? Or actually, was it really more geared to working within a school or whatever it might be? Or is it actually not geared to any kind of job at all? It's just a list of kind of things. So does your CV really say who you are, and is that CV really right for the job that you're applying for? And it is absolutely worth taking some time to make sure that your CV is the best CV that it can be. We hope you found that useful, and it's given you some ideas about how you can make your CV the very best it can be. In part 2, we'll look at how to make the best job application. As recruiters, we're inundated with applications for each of our jobs. In this session, we'll look at how you can make your application stand out from the crowd, not only to us, but also to potential employers. The session will be on Wednesday, the 5th of June, between 12:30 to 1:30. Details will be on our website with the link.